Good day to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our discussion today, February 24th, 2024. Let's get on right with it, starting down now since we're under 100 days away from the hurricane season. Our countdown, we'll do this every single week now, the countdown till June 1st. This week, we're at 98 days. Obviously, not that much difference from 100 since we only reached it just 2 days ago, but eventually this will slowly begin to decrease and we'll see us get closer to the hurricane season. Trust me, it is 98 days. May seem like a lot of time, but trust me, it is not that much time as much as you think. And it'll definitely go by pretty quickly. And you can trust me on that one for sure. I want to start off though, kind of switching things up with the SOI dashboard, the latest value, because I feel like we don't talk about the SOI as much. I guess maybe because it's been negative and it's been kind of an obvious thing. It's been negative recently. Um, but it really has been pretty negative. It's dipped well below the neutral line. We're now as much, at least in the 30-day average, up to negative 18 points below the average for the SOI, and that means that there's definitely not very strong trade winds in the Pacific right now. And typically we would equate that to the El Nino and the El Nino kind of pattern that we're seeing ongoing right now. And that's even reflected in the 90-day average. We're at negative 5 points below the average with the SOI. So El Nino is definitely holding on. And the biggest reason why the SOI has really been so negative, let's go back here. These are all the dates from at least the last month showing the daily contributions to the SOI. And you can just take a look at some of these values. We would have days on end with values sometimes really negative. Look at this. This is February 6th. We had a value of negative 41. And just a few days later after that, a value of negative 46. You would imagine this would drag down the 30-day average of the SOI dramatically. But that doesn't mean that El Nino is going to hold on for much longer, and we'll obviously talk about that in just a little bit. But I guess that could segue us into what we have right now with the sea surface temperature anomalies. Obviously, because the SOI is still negative, El Nino is holding on. It is weakening slowly, and because the SOI is very negative, that's why it's probably weakening slowly and not going straight forward to La Nina, because it could be doing that right now, but obviously we still have atmospheric conditions that are in place that are at least keeping the Nino holding on for at least a little bit longer, if you know what I mean. And obviously that is reflected along the equatorial Pacific, very warm anomalies still showing up, which is to be expected. Even here in the Nino 3.4 regions, we still have anomalies on the chart, 2 Celsius even along the equatorial Pacific. So for now, El Nino is still in place. And so is the warm Atlantic. And even that, though, has been cooling down over the last several days. We've seen an increase in trades, but that shouldn't be too much of a worry because the Atlantic is obviously warm right now. I mean, take a look at these anomalies still, 3, even 4 Celsius in portions of the eastern MDR. And this portion of the Gulf, too, very interesting as well, probably associated with the loop current. And we'll actually take a look at that closely in just a bit with the actual sea surface temperatures. But just to show you, the MDR has cooled down a little bit. Trades have increased over the last several days. We're now down to negative 1.16 Celsius, not negative, positive, because if it was negative, we would have a bunch of these anomalies, basically these blue anomalies here. That would probably be all across the entire MDR if it was negative, but it's positive. And it still remains to be positive above 1 Celsius, incredibly so. Since the beginning of the year, we've not dipped below a full degree Celsius above normal in the MDR. And that's still alarming, honestly, even with the fact that we've had some of these stronger trade bursts. One, for instance, we go back to January, that did bring us pretty close to the 1 Celsius mark, but we still didn't dip below. And we're pretty much we're higher than we were at our highest point in early January. We've warmed up a little bit since then, and this trade wind burst, I'm going to tell you right now, will probably only last for so long. And before these trades loosen up again, because they will soon, this will probably shoot right back up, and I wouldn't be surprised in the very least if once again we don't dip below 1 degree Celsius above normal in the MDR. Just saying. Obviously, oh, I had the Nino 3.4, but I guess I don't. Actually, let's do that right now. I'm gonna go to cyclonic weather. Oops. Sometimes you don't always have the graphics that you need, but it's fine. Here it is though, the Nino 3.4, just to show it. Yes, Nino is still holding on, and as I'm saying, as long as we have the atmospheric conditions for El Nino, it will continue to hold on. But that doesn't mean that it isn't slowly weakening, because it is. We're definitely down from earlier this year when we peaked over 2 Celsius above normal. That is absolutely, we're down from that. And we dipped below the 1.5 line, which is what we typically consider strong El Nino. The strong El Nino threshold is 1.5 Celsius, and we've dipped below that. So we're definitely slowly dissipating with this El Nino. And you can even see over the last few days, we've seen an increase in the weakening and the downward trend of the sea surface temperature anomalies. And as the weeks goes on, I would not be surprised if we see more of this in the Nino 3.4 region, obviously, as El Nino continues to dissipate. I did mention, though, if you go back, let's really quickly go back here to the sea surface temperature anomalies. Look at that portion in the Gulf. And these are the sea surface temperature anomalies. How does that look, though, if we actually look at the sea surface temperatures that are actually in the Gulf right now? And this is what that is. This is the sea surface temperatures, the actual sea surface temperatures, not the departures from normal. And that is right here in the Gulf. You could see this huge area extending northward, some values in the Gulf of Mexico in February, 26 degrees Celsius. So basically, sea surface temperatures that are already conducive for tropical development in February already extend northward into the Gulf. And this is associated with the loop current, and probably what this means, this anomaly right here, that probably means that the loop current is very strong this year. And that really isn't too much of a concern right now because it is only February, but will be very interesting to see if once we get to the season, we do have a storm that tracks into the Gulf and this is still as strong as it is right now. What could that mean, at least for intensification? Because sometimes, and we've seen this in recent years with storms, for instance, like Ida, if you remember back in 2021, we had a really strong loop current. And once Ida traversed it, it blew up and became a strong Category 4 storm. So that is very interesting for sure, and we'll definitely watch this. Meanwhile, though, the northern Gulf, obviously, the rest of the Gulf not that warm. Shelf waters reaching as low as 16. I see some 16 Celsius values right near the Louisiana coast. Obvious as it's February. Arctic fronts coming down, bringing Arctic air, mixing and cooling the shelf waters of the northern Gulf. Wouldn't put too much thought into that, though, because come June, and this will all warm up easily, probably to average of 28, 29 Celsius in the Gulf. Happens every single year. Wouldn't worry about it. What about off the East Coast? And obviously, off the East Coast, we could look back here at the sea surface temperature anomalies. That is not that warm, at least in terms of general anomalies, although, as been obvious over the last few years, we've had a really strong Gulf Stream, which that is actually connected to the loop current. So it makes sense that the loop current is very strong, as well as strong, very positive anomalies showing up in the Gulf Stream. They're both connected, as a lot of things in the ocean are. And those anomalies also show up pretty decently. We have 23s, even some 24 Celsius, but obviously it's February, and the 26 degrees Celsius temperatures that we typically see in the Gulf Stream, they don't really show up till May or June. So right now we're only 24, 23. Not really at the threshold yet for development of tropical systems, but again, it's only February, late February. But we will begin to probably over the next several weeks, we'll see this warm up very soon, and we'll probably reach 26 Celsius at some point. Here, though, this is the T-depth anomalies in the Pacific, basically looking at once again, going back to this map. But this map is really important, which is why I keep on going back to it. This map here, if you're not familiar with it, this is basically this map But if you take, it's basically this map, but if you take this portion of the water along the equatorial Pacific and look at it in depth instead of just along the surface like this all is. This is just a plot of all the sea surface temperature anomalies on the surface. This is an actual look at how deep those warm anomalies extend. And this is the Pacific right now. Actually stopped right at the latest frame, which is February 17th. And it basically shows the warm waters that we have, obviously, with the El Nino, they're on the surface, but if you look just below that, we have a bunch of these cold anomalies here, and this will eventually make its way to the surface, and this is what will help bring our La Nina over the next several months. And you really notice too that this El Nino is not, there's not much time left of this El Nino, because look at how little of the warm waters that are remaining near to the surface along the equatorial Pacific. It's really not there anymore. So that really would put any concern for potentially El Nino holding on to rest, because there really is no more depths to the water for this El Nino to work with. If you just go just a little bit more below the surface, all there is colder water, and very cold water relative to the average, and also in pretty decent depths too, and in also pretty expansive as well, which will help eventually as it surfaces. This will probably help erase all this water that's near the surface, and eventually we'll get our La Nina going. And obviously, it's reflected in all the model predictions. This is the IRI. Did talk about this several days ago when I did my 100-day countdown video, right at the 100 days, which we were several days ago. But just reviewing it again, this is the Climate Prediction Center IRI forecast for the ENSO. And you could just see here, anybody could just see all of them just go down from this point where we are now up until later this year. They just all go down past below neutral. Only one or two ensembles, and I probably wouldn't even put much thought into it, but only all but one or two dip below the neutral line, and all do so by the time we get to summer. So that means that once again, this El Nino that we see right now will continue to slowly dissipate over the next several weeks. I would imagine so, at least. And by the summer, a lot of these models are pretty much very strongly in agreement that will be in some sort of cool neutral. And then as we get further into the year, look at this, by the time we get to the peak of the hurricane season, August, September, October, all but four or maybe five ensembles or models that are being represented in this graph here are above La Nina, are below La Nina, or below the threshold for La Nina. Basically, summing up everything that I just said, a lot of the models are in strong agreement, and also all of the averages too, the CPC console and the dynamic and statistical averages, all of them dip below the threshold for La Nina at some point, basically meaning the agreement is there. The agreement is there that La Nina will come. And another way to look at it, the probability, this is, I guess, taking a look at the CPC console specifically, but the probabilities that they give, this is this graph, and self-explanatory here too. By the time we get to summer, La Nina chances shoot up compared to all the other chances that we have. Neutral goes down, El Nino definitely tanks out, and this is probably less than 10, yeah, well below 10% chance that we see anything El Nino related at all. So there's basically no chance we'll get an El Nino after this, and then La Nina chances shoot up. Basically, that's a 70%. And I actually brought up the actual page where the graph is, because they actually have the real percentages on there. And by the time we get to August, September, October, the peak season, they actually show the actual percent chance for each category. And look at La Nina, 71% chance that they have that La Nina will be in place by the time we get to the peak. So basically, pretty strong in agreement that La Nina will come. And there's just really no other way to put it. All the models, they agree that La Nina will come. They agree that this very warm Atlantic look that we have right now, despite maybe we're having trades right now probably won't last long, and eventually we'll see warming resume in the Atlantic, and that'll probably mean that this warmth probably over the next few months will continue, and maybe we'll see this warmth spread westward over the Atlantic. All the models agree on that, especially with the fact that they all agree on La Nina too as well. All factors that are historically in favor for a very active Atlantic season. There's just no other way to put it, and they all seem to be in strong agreement that those will come into play. All these factors will come into play this year. Moving away though from hurricane season, because severe weather season is coming up very soon, in just a few days, in fact, as we head into meteorological spring, which begins on March 1st. So does severe weather season, and severe weather does actually look like it will uptrend. Not now, though. The day one and day two and day three outlooks are looking pretty quiet, nothing much. But as we get towards day four, 15% chance, which is roughly equivalent to a slight risk over portions of the Tennessee Valley and into the southeast from the Midwest, moving into the southeast. Basically, this weather front, very strong front that'll move through, and I'll actually illustrate it on the GFS, the 6C run from the GFS. Let me put it into time. A strong front that moves through, associated with a very strong low pressure, 988 millibars over southern Canada. Basically, what happens, high pressure sets up to the east. Very strong front moves through, and you can see here, Gulf moisture directly from the Gulf sets up, comes up north, and we also have colder air behind that, which is probably why they show the snow, probably bringing colder air from Canada. But you can see here on the GFS, very potent band setting up, probably a strong line of probably some severe thunderstorms and maybe obvious tornado threat there as well. But severe weather setting up, and this is by the time we get to Thursday, then that moves into Friday, and that moves out, but looks like Wednesday and Thursday could potentially see some severe weather set up along portions of the central to eastern half of the United States. And we're moving into February now, and as we get towards 138 hours out, so next week we're at March 1st, so we're moving away from winter, and we're slowly going to begin to see the transition for spring to spring from winter. And that'll mean even more interesting things for hurricane season as we get past what we call the spring predictability barrier, which usually kind of ends, or the predictability barrier kind of is around March, I think March 1st. And once we get past the spring predictability barrier, that's when we typically are able to predict, or at least take more seriously, model outputs that we get for the hurricane season. And that's also as we head later into the month of March, and as we head into April, we typically begin to get more hurricane predictions, usually from people like Colorado State University, North Carolina State, all those big weather organizations that we look for their hurricane predictions. They begin to release around April and late March. And once we get to that point, then you'll definitely know hurricane season is just on the doorstep. I mean, we're soon going to be below 90 days, and once we get below 90 days, before you know it, we'll be below 80, and then below 70. So time will fly by. So definitely use the time right now to keep on top of hurricane season. But obviously, as we head into March, severe weather season will kick up too. And a lot of people say that that could be interesting this year for sure, especially with a pretty warm Gulf that we do have right now. I'd imagine so that severe weather season could be interesting. Lots of things though that we'll definitely watch over the next few weeks as they come. But that is it though for this discussion. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please, I would greatly appreciate it, and I would also greatly appreciate these notifications to stop. Guess I got to turn that off for the next time. But we really appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends. Help us grow this YouTube channel. As always, I would really appreciate any support. And I would appreciate if, of course, you subscribe. It's very easy, no cost, unlike some other websites that will probably pay you that will probably pay to make you subscribe to somebody. YouTube doesn't, and that's the beauty of YouTube, which is why I do all my content on YouTube and on Twitter, which you can follow me as well. Just search up my name and you'll see me easily on Twitter. And yeah, I think that does it for this discussion. Stay safe, peace, love, and kindness to all, and we will talk again very soon.